everyone, let's verify, because any prediction without a system to score it, as you know, is worthless. That's a truth only ethical climate modelers will ever speak. Yesterday's forecast, a min of 1, a max of 3, and a mean of 2. At the stake, 10. What went wrong? It's almost always the snow density, and, well, Powder Dave may have been asleep at the wheel yesterday, so preoccupied with sorting out the weather service, I acted just like the weather service and got in my own bloody way. Look at Brad's super handy temperature plot since 6 a.m. from WhistlerPeak.com. Snow falling at -9 is uncommon at Whistler and shatters the Super Dave assumption of 10-to-1 snow-to-water ratio. Barton's paper showed the ratio ranges from 3-to-1, known as the worst of West Coast concrete, to 40-to-1. Pow's so light you can't ski it without bottoming out on whatever hard layer sits directly beneath the fresh layer. If you substitute 10-to-1 with 20 or 30 or even 40-to-1, which seems unlikely, yesterday's forecast doesn't look so bad. I won't get fooled again, at least not this week. This is a good example of why MTs will always be in demand if they stay awake, and at least until models can adjust snow to liquid water ratios on the fly, which will happen eventually. When I look at this satellite imagery, I just can't see enough moisture. So, before we get juiced about the forecast for Tuesday and start multiplying 6 by 2, 3, or 4, I'm going to intervene, hopefully avoiding a red face 2 days in a row, and say ignore the forecast, but check the stake in the morning just to cover my ass. As promised, I'm now going to shift into something more serious, and timely too, because getting in its own way is habitual for the Meteorological Service of Canada, and as I said about proving it, I couldn't have asked for a better example. A spokesperson for Environment Canada apparently said this last week. Weather forecasting became more unpredictable and more extreme in BC starting in 2017, followed by, in 2017, we turned a pretty big corner. Sounds authoritative, doesn't it? And it's coming from the MSC, why wouldn't you trust it? Louis Fry Richardson wouldn't. He's the father of numerical weather prediction. And right now, he's convulsing in his grave, stunned at the implications for his fine work if this statement is true. The spokesperson is saying the physics of the atmosphere changed. Just like that, in 2017. Louis, sorry mate, you're going to have to rise from the dead and fix the primitive equations in all weather models, which must be faulty if the atmosphere can change like that. In 2008, the Justice Institute approached me. We're doing an exercise. Can you dream up a hypothetical extreme weather scenario that sends most of BC into emergency response mode? We need some practice. Why, of course, said I immediately. Why don't we just use a historical event, but shift the landfall into the worst possible place, somewhere in the Lower Mainland? That would surely create a nightmare of impacts. We even made a fakey newscast for the exercise, which I'm really good at.
Good afternoon. We start tonight with the subject on everyone's mind, the weather.
Thanks, Darren. Many of you may remember the tropical punch storm of mid-January 2005. That's when an incredibly wet tropical weather system crashed through southern BC right on the heels of an extended Arctic outbreak. Heavy snow, followed by warm air with extremely high freezing levels and heavy rain, led to avalanches, flooding, and landslides, shutting down transportation routes, knocking out the power, and isolating many communities. Darren, the weather over the next few days looks very similar to the tropical punch of 2005. In 2013, a workshop on atmospheric rivers was held in Victoria. I attended. In 2014, a report on the workshop was published. From part 4 of this report, titled Enhancing Our Response, identifying vulnerabilities and emergency management needs in advance could reduce risks to communities. This would involve supplying forecasters with a decision-making matrix that contains an agreed-upon set of localized minimization actions and lead times in advance of an extreme weather event. 8 years later? Where's the matrix, Waldo? Hell if I know, but not in the weather office, that's for sure. So it was only a matter of time, much like the next earthquake, only atmospheric rivers have a much shorter return period. This is the least interesting story I'll tell this week, because who hasn't heard of government getting in its own way and government inaction? Tomorrow, a very sorry story about a United Nations recognized landslide and debris flow warning system. Cheerio.
Come at me or don't come at all.